It's the Music Stupid number 68. It's Mazzy here. Welcome back. 5 records that I've been playing the last couple of days that I'm going to present to you. I think I have a nice wide variety of genres today. I'm going to start out with 1967's debut, June of 1967 on Columbia Records, Moby Grape. This is produced by David Rubinson in Los Angeles. Now, all the labels flocked to San Francisco after the success of the Jefferson Airplane. Of course, RCA signed Jefferson Airplane. Their first album was more of a folk rock record recorded in LA. That was Takes Off before Grace Slick joined. And Skip Spence was the drummer on that first Airplane album. He would leave. Spencer Dryden, a much better drummer, much better fit, joins the Airplane, and he starts here with Moby Grape. I think Skip Spence was also in an early incarnation of Quicksilver, but that didn't last long either. It was a very incestuous time of the San Francisco groups. Now, there is apparently, I've been told by sources, that there's a drinking game. Every time Norman Maslov here says San Francisco, people take a shot. So choose your shot: espresso, gin, whiskey, root beer, Dr. Pepper. Those are my favorite. I'm not a Coca-Cola person. I'm not even a soft drink person, but gin, whiskey is my preference in terms of those things, and espresso, as you know. But all the labels flocked here. Columbia signs Moby Grape. They would also sign Santana. There's probably other bands. It's a Beautiful Day. There would be Capitol Records would sign, and I'm probably missing something, but Steve Miller Band, that's when Boz Scaggs was in the band on the first 2 albums. They would sign Quicksilver Messenger Service. Vanguard, the folky record, would sign Country Joe and the Fish. Fantasy, local label, would sign Creedence Clearwater Revival, and so many others. Sly and the Family Stone would go to Columbia a little later. That wasn't psychedelic, but soul funk, you know them. And he would produce early 64, the big first San Francisco breakthrough in terms of rock and roll with the Beau Brummels. And BEAU was right after BEAT in the record bin. So the Beau Brummels had that kind of British type of look and sound at the time. Produced by Tom Donahue with Sly Stone. He's the DJ at the time that produced that first Beau Brummels. Laugh, Laugh, You Tell Me Why, and the first album on Autumn Records, very independent. But it was a major hit across the country, Laugh, Laugh. Anyway, I digress. Produced by David Rubinson in Los Angeles. What was unique about this group, they had 3 guitar players, like 2 rhythm, a lead guitar player, and a bass player. Even though people put it in the psychedelic San Francisco thing, I don't find it very psychedelic. I mean, yes, there's some loud guitars. This is like an intense kind of rock and country garage record. It blows the roof off. It's so powerful, and it's very different than the kind of laid back psychedelic-y Grateful Dead. Even the Jefferson Airplane. I mean, they could be really powerful. I think they were the best live band of the San Francisco groups until they imploded and the Dead really took that mantle. But I never saw them live their first time around. One of the only bands that I really missed. But I've seen and heard recordings, and they were powerful. They were great. Now, Columbia Records kind of botched this. They also had this manager, Matthew Katz, that died in the last couple of years. Good riddance. I'm sorry. He screwed up both Moby Grape and It's a Beautiful Day, owning their names, and for the rest of their history, they got really screwed with the reissues. About 10, 12 years ago, Sundays did a reissue program with the first 4 records, I believe, and they had to pull them right away after the fact. I do have those on CD and vinyl, those represses. And the other thing is Columbia really botched it here. They think it was great promotion. So they had a big party and a big promotion. They chose 5 songs, released 5 singles at once with I think, identical picture sleeves. The whole idea of when you release a single for radio, you want the DJs, you want the program directors to play your records. You want something to break. And so it was so confusing, you didn't know what to play. The song that should have been a major hit here, which has been, one of the great 100 songs in music from this era, is Omaha on here. It thunders out of the gate, explodes out of the gate. There's a great version on here, well, their original of Hey Grandma, that also is a great song that was covered by The Move in the UK, I think at the end of the 60s, early 70s as well. But this is a fantastic record. Now, a couple other things here. So it as well as it's sold, it wasn't an explosive breakthrough. And then after this, subsequent records kind of limped along, and they never got their full due sales-wise, but they're a very influential band. Again, that country swampy thing going, and a really intense, like explosive band. The cover shot is famous, photographed by the great Jim Marshall out of San Francisco. There's a shot from the Fillmore on the back here. And of course, a couple things about this cover picture. First, this is the original cover. This is my original mono copy. I have 4 copies of this record, and I'll show you one other for a reason. Obviously, this is the one where Jerry Miller, I guess, is flipping off the bird there. Is that Jerry Miller? No, that's Jerry Miller. Sorry. Anyway, he's flipping the bird. The other thing that Columbia did at the time, and Jim Marshall, I've seen his original pictures. They've been printed over the years. Right here, this red flag, if you look close, it's actually a red, white, and blue American flag. But for whatever reason, in the esteemed minds of the people at Columbia Records, they didn't want an American flag on the cover because of the political turmoil with the Vietnam War and all that stuff. Are you kidding me? Really? And that was just in this front of this antique shop that they photographed this place. So they painted it red. So it's red. Of course, then people thought it was communist flag. Now, in subsequent issues, here's one. As you can see, the finger has been retouched. So basically, it looks like his finger is folded or it's cut off. The flag now is black. What the hell, right? They change it here because of, there's various cover variations. And it did include, the first few pressings did include this poster of the cover. So if you want a larger version of Moby Grape flipping the bird, you get this wonderful large poster. And this was around into the 70s as well. So it's not necessarily hard to find one of these posters, but check it out. It's just a great rock and roll album, a powerful album, not so psychedelic, but there are also some beautiful acoustic pieces. 805 has this great acoustic guitar intro. Beautiful, perfect song. And the idea of that song was when one of them was driving across the Golden Gate Bridge from Marin County, and there was a big clock at the toll plaza there, and it said 8:05. It was at 8:05, and that's where that came from. And then there's a song on here, which is the tail end of, I believe it's on side 1, tail end of side 1, Naked If I Want To, which is just a really kind of like a 1-minute piece, and it's beautiful as well. They would subsequently record an electric version of that on their second album. Wow. That's another story for another day. I think I've showcased that album before. So San Francisco, take a shot. Moby Grape's debut album, 1967. Now, from 1966, this is, I believe, the third album by Bert Jansch. Bert Jansch. I never saw this original cover. This is how it came out originally in 1966 in England. In America, it came out, I think it didn't come out here until around 70 or 71 with a color photograph. The cover is nowhere as good. So I didn't see this record for years, but I remember when I first saw this. This is an album by Bert Jansch, 1966, his third album called Jack Orion. But every time I see this, what do you see there? Looks like it says Jack Onion. I'm sorry, that calligraphy. I'm seeing Jack Onion. So this will always be Jack Onion to me. This is a later Super Viaduct reissue from 2016, emulating the original cover. This is really a nice version of this record. I've never had the original UK version. Now, what's interesting about this, the first 2 solo albums he did, there's a lot of, it's mostly originals, right? But this, all of a sudden, after the 2 records, he puts together some things with more traditional things and some cover versions on here. He also had recorded an album with John Renbourn, both of them together, a duet album, which is just a wonderful record. I pretty much buy all of Bert Jansch records. And of course, in 1968, Bert Jansch, along with John Renbourn and Jackie McShea and was it Cox? Tony Cox? Not Tony Cox. And the bass player, I'm blanking out right now, formed Pentangle. And that 1968 first Pentangle album, I've shown here, is to me is a perfect album. It's a fusion of folk rock, acoustic, traditional stuff, and jazz. All acoustic. Just a wonderful, wonderful record. What's interesting about this, there's a mix of English folk, Scottish folk, some traditional things, a 9-minute song of Jack Orion, not Jack Onion on here. There's a great cover, instrumental, very short, almost unrecognizable. Ian McCall's The First Time I Ever Saw Your Face. Now, in 73 or so, that would be a massive worldwide hit for Roberta Flack. That just beautiful, slow, moving song. But this is only like a less than a 2-minute acoustic version, not so recognizable. Also on here, there's a song, Blackwater Side. Now, you'll recognize that because it's a traditional English folk song that you've heard on the first Led Zeppelin album, the acoustic version. I think Jimmy Page calls it something else, Blackwater something or other. So, that whole influence of these things that Led Zeppelin took and were influenced and made it their own. And they did it in a good way, but he does a beautiful version of that. Pretty Polly on here, The Gardener. There's another song, I think it's The Gardener also. That's a song that you've heard the instrumental kind of folk leanings and influences of Led Zeppelin, the Jimmy Page on there. But this is just a beautiful album. Some of it's instrumental, some of it's his voice. He's got this kind of very English, wonderfully. I like his voice. It's just there's a certain intensity tenor to it that's really lovely. And what a great guitar player. Him and John Renbourn. Those two records, those two artists together and separately, I'm pretty much all in on their records. So Jack Orion from 1966. This is an album from 1964, the Kentucky Colonels, Appalachian Swing. Of course, it's a little play on the title from Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring. But this was a group in Los Angeles featuring the brothers Roland on mandolin and Clarence on guitar, young Clarence White, the White brothers. But also on here, you have Billy Ray on banjo, Roger Bush bass and banjo, Bobby Sloan violin and bass, and Leroy Mack dobro. This is their second album from 1964. This was an all acoustic instrumental record, and it's beautiful bluegrass. This was on World Pacific Records, recorded in Los Angeles at World Pacific Studio. That was the label. They expanded from Pacific Jazz Recordings, the West Coast Jazz, with just that kind of smooth, cool West Coast scene. And they wanted to expand. Most people know the label because of all the issues they put out of Ravi Shankar Records, more of a world label. Now, this label was later sold to United Artists, then sold to Blue Note, and obviously now it's Universal, right? EMI, Universal, they own everything. So since this is World Pacific and part of Pacific Jazz, maybe this could be a tone poet. If Joe Harley wanted to do some bluegrass, newgrass. But this is a very influential record, not just because of Clarence White, but has a lot to do with Clarence White. He was one of the first great flat-picking acoustic guitar bluegrass players that really influenced a lot of acoustic guitar players in the newgrass, people like Tony Rice and so many others on here. I love this record, and I got into this record by a friend of mine, Vernon, who hired me at this record store in the 70s, and he was so into roots and bluegrass. And of course, I'll tell you why I got into this. This is a 70s UK United Artist reissue. This adds 2 sides to the single, and then there is a later, like an 80s Rounder Records, or late 70s, 80s Rounder record out of Massachusetts that has some of these songs and other songs. Now, before I get into some more details, those of you who want the best sounding version, even though I don't usually do this in this series of It's the Music Stupid, there's a CD here, and guess who mastered this and who's proud of mastering this? This is mastered by Steve Hoffman, and it does sound great. This has the bonus tracks on it too. Really great acoustic album mastered by none other than Steve Hoffman of the Hoffman Forums. Clarence White I got into because in 1968 he was on Sweetheart of the Rodeo with the Byrds, and he became one of the members of the later half of the Byrds. Great guitar player, an amazing guitar player. Listen to his guitar playing, blast it and listen to the acoustic stuff that's going on Chestnut Mare. That album is a double album that has one record live. It's very jammy, very kind of 17-minute explorations of 8 Miles High. But then you have these great acoustic, rootsy, kind of crossover country rock things. But his acoustic guitar playing on Chestnut Mare is stunning. And he would go on to be in that band until their demise in 72, I guess 73. He tried to reform the Kentucky Colonels with Herb Pedersen and his brother. And unfortunately, in late 73, he was loading equipment with his brother and got hit by a car. He was killed. His brother, Roland, was injured. But another claim to fame, the drummer at the time was Gene Parsons in the Byrds, that later period of the Byrds. And Gene Parsons was a bit of an inventor and tinker, and Clarence White, with the help of really Gene Parsons, invented what is called the B-bender. It's something that goes on at the time, a Telecaster, that stretches the B string to make it sound more like a pedal steel guitar. I don't even understand it all, but it's been, reproduced. You can buy them on Fender guitars and other guitars. But it was a really unique sound. If you see the way he plays on some of those recordings with the Byrds, it's unbelievable. So the Kentucky Colonels, if you can find a clean copy of this, this is my original. This is a 70s press that I got probably in 74. And it's kind of noisy, unfortunately, but it's still such a great, it's straight bluegrass. It's not going to be like a Tony Rice record, but it's really good. In fact, on here, they opened up side 2 with a traditional song, I Am a Pilgrim, that just happened to be covered on Sweetheart of the Rodeo, the 68 great country rock album by the Byrds. This is from 1968. This is Nico's The Marble Index. This is co-produced by Fraser Mohawk, who was a kind of an in-house producer at Elektra Records, but really John Cale. He did the arrangements, the classical arrangements. This is a dark, dirgy, monotone record. Beautiful, eerie, and obtuse. They call it avant-garde, experimental. It was recorded by John Cale mostly, and apparently Nico, who was playing the harmonium, that kind of pump organ, portable pump organ, it's just her and her voice playing that pump organ initially. The way they worked on it after, John Cale produced all these different other instrumentation, sound effects, a lot of cello, a lot of string arrangements. So it gets in sort of this neoclassical thing in an obtuse way. Did I already say obtuse again? I'm using it again because it's that kind of record. It's a dark record. It's very German expressionist. It's like 1920s. If you know Nico's voice, obviously from the 3 tracks she sings on the first Velvet Underground album, she's got that monotone, almost no melody in her singing, and that's what it's like. But there's some weird sounds, percussive sounds, and string sounds. It's a very Baroque, Bauhausian, psychedelic record of the time. And I did read some notes that are in the insert here. Again, this is a Domino reissue. I'd never had this originally. I had the first album she did, which is Chelsea Girl, which is more accessible, which has Jackson Browne and Dylan and I think Leonard Cohen songs. Beautiful record. If you bought that record and expected to hear the same here, it's not anywhere near the same. And this is sort of the first of 3 records she did with John Cale that are now considered a trilogy. I think they're all really interesting. This is my favorite of the 3 with this beautiful cover image on here by Guy Webster. I love this record, but I didn't get into this record until the early 80s when the whole, groups like Bauhaus and the darker side of things were happening in the 80s. This album kind of, was reevaluated then. But Jock Holtzman at Elektra Records got the tape and put it out, even though he thought, this is out there, this is weird, but he thought, we're a label and we've been having a lot of success. And as Elektra Records, it came out of the folk scene. They want to put out just important and good music that everything doesn't have to sell. And that's sort of the ethos that Warner Brothers used to have too in the 60s. Not everyone had to be a hit. You'd sell some other big record to finance the records like this. You'd sell the Doors records to finance records like this. So this is The Marble Index by Nico from 1968. Ironically, this came out the same month as the Beatles' White Album. A little bit of Revolution #9 there, maybe. As is this. Now, 1979. This is 20 Jazz Funk Greats by Throbbing Gristle. Industrial, noise, experimental, electric. This is their first all proper studio album. They did 2 albums before this, which had some live cuts, a mix, and this is nothing like the cover. Now, I was trying to think when I bought this, because usually I have a good memory of buying a record. Now, I thought I bought this at Rough Trade. Rough Trade had a store in San Francisco. First they were in North Beach, and they moved to 6th Street, south of Market. Then they moved to Haight Street. And this is 1979, and I don't remember if that store, maybe they didn't open till the 80s, so maybe I didn't get it there. Maybe I picked it up at Tower or somewhere else. But this is nothing like the cover, and that's pretty much the point. And one of the members, Peter Christofferson, who does tape, vibes, cornet, vocals, was one of the partners or one of the designers at Hypnosis, the art direction design team that did all those great album covers for Pink Floyd and Paul McCartney and Peter Gabriel and Syd Barrett and so many others. He was one of the great designers there. And the story goes on this, he ended up borrowing a 16-track tape recorder from Paul McCartney because I think it was when Venus and Mars came out, he was one of the artists working on that package, and he asked Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney loaned him. Now, having known that, I only recently found that out. So this is very electronic. There's a lot of bloops and bleeps and noise and some vocals, some instrumentals on here. Paul McCartney loans him this tape machine in 1979. Next year, he does Temporary Secretary, and he does all the, McCartney 2 with all electronics. I bet you there's some influence there from this and other, obviously a lot of the German electronic artists like Kraftwerk and Can and those kind of things. So I don't even know, but I wouldn't doubt it. Band from Essex, I believe, and this is on this bluff. I can't remember the name of the bluff. Apparently it's one of the bluffs where more suicides happen than a lot of other places. And so they thought it'd be kind of this fun record cover to make it look like one of those cheapo album covers you get in the supermarkets or the Woolworths or something that are reissues. And that's why they named it 20 Jazz Funk Greats. But you put it on and there's this noisy, kind of obtuse, obtuse creations. And it's really interesting. It's funny, I played this again the last couple of days, and it's not as wild as I remember it in 1979 when I bought it. Of course, there's been so many things since that have emulated this. This is an important record. This is probably the first major critically praised industrial record. A lot of the critics that didn't get this thing just trashed it, but it's kind of a cool record. Now, it also has Chris Carter on here, Genesis Piorge, and Cossi Fanni Tutti. And since I'm mentioning Cossi Fanni Tutti, highly recommended is her autobiography that came out. I don't know how long ago it came out. Art, Sex, Music, Cossi Fanni Tutti. Musician, artist Cossi Fanni Tutti has continually challenged boundaries and conventions for 4 decades. As a founding member of the highly influential avant-garde group Throbbing Gristle, as one half of electronic pioneers Chris and Cossi, and as an artistic channeling her experience in pornography, modeling, and striptease, her work on the margins has come to reshape the mainstream. Shockingly wise and life-affirming, Art, Sex, Music is a captivating memoir of an inspirational woman. So put this on, read this book, and enjoy the music. As he loves you.